So again, my name is Jacoby DuBose. I am a professor at the Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts in Washington, D.C. at the Howard University. And, in the introduction, it is stated I am the founder also of Metatopia Incorporated, which is, I like to call it an extended reality company. We focus on building experiences in multiple realities and bringing those realities to everyone on any device that they have. I am also a director composer, so I thrive in the film space, directing and also writing film scores. And I like to pride this last year, I actually got the opportunity to bring some of the things that I love to Howard University. I started off teaching the General Motors capstone course in automotive design. But everyone knew my passion for film and my work in the film industry. So through our Howard Entertainment courses, I was able to create this course in virtual production. And the students actually loved it, and these students actually go on to, after they take the virtual production course at Howard University, they go on to work in Hollywood at Amazon Studios. So a little bit about me. I came up with this terminology maybe 15 plus years ago when I first started talking about my career and my experience and my history. I used to tell people I went from DC to DC, and no one really understood what that meant. But I'm from a small town called Darlington, South Carolina, known for NASCAR. And quite a few other things. I think some of you watched the movie last night, and in this theater. And Darlington is, it has the NASCAR racetrack, but we're also well known and pride ourselves on being the city that gave Tom Cruise a speeding ticket. How dare he attempt this impossible mission of trying to speed through our streets while filming Days of Thunder. But our sister city is also well known for being the home of one of the most prolific artists. William H. Johnson was one of the most renowned artists of the Harlem Renaissance. So I graduated from a school called Mayo High School for Math, Science, and Technology. And at that time, we were able to do concentrations in high school. It was a private school, and my concentration was in physics and computer science. Never actually had the desire to be an athlete prior to my senior year in high school. And I didn't really have much to do because I actually completed high school the year before, but my parents wouldn't allow me to graduate early. So I played football and then, just decided to go out for track and field, and I just stumbled upon being good. And I earned a scholarship. I actually was one of the top 10 track and field athletes in the country that year, and I got a lot of scholarship offers, but there was one call that came through, and I don't know, it really inspired me. And the thought of going from Darlington County to the District of Columbia became more and more real, and I signed a scholarship to Howard University. And had a pretty good track and field career there, was top 10 in the country, finished as All-American, 3-time All-Conference, MEAC conference, 3-time MVP of our team. So after college, I actually went on to train for the Olympics, and I trained at Disney Wild World of Sports. Have a few more things in my presentation, but I actually will revisit that Disney Wild World of Sports story. So first, to really dive into alternative verses, let's talk about a subject that everybody is probably familiar with today. How many of you have dove into the metaverse over the last couple of years? Show of hands. Yeah, that's what I thought. So have any of you read the books by Neil Stephenson, specifically Snow Crash? Okay, we got a few hands up in here. Okay, cool. So we all know that Neil Stephenson actually coined the term metaverse. And there were some specific things that I pushed back on, but it is why the metaverse, really became what it is today. There were things related more to currency um, in the book Snow Crash, and I think some of that is because we were so tightly coupled to cryptocurrency and then also the naming of our large conglomerate of Facebook changing their name to Meta. Some of that presented challenges for what we thought the metaverse would be. So I often compare and say that with Metatopia, instead of focusing just on what the metaverse is or what we think it should be, we like to go to what predates the metaverse, and that's cyberspace. So have any of you read any of William Gibson's books? Great. I think I've worked with a few of you that have worked on Blade Runner, and some of that terminology for Blade Runner, some of that inspiration came from William Gibson's books. So William Gibson actually, when he started to write Neuromancer, he coined the terminology of cyberpunk and cyberspace. And when doing that, this was a guy that was not a technologist. He actually sat at a bar. And, while sitting at the bar, he was able to pick up on all of this terminology from computer scientists bringing their work to the bar. Not in the sense that they were sitting there with laptops, but they were talking about their work on a daily basis. And that enabled him to build that vocabulary that he needed to actually write the book. But then Michael Benedict, who is an architect and a theorist, he actually took it a little further, where William Gibson thought about, it being just virtual reality. Michael Benedict expanded on the concept of cyberspace and provided definitions for architects, engineers, and creators. Benedict also argued that cyberspace is a new dimension for human experience, a space where the physical and virtual realities actually merge. He saw cyberspace as a domain where individuals could design, construct, and manipulate virtual environments that existed alongside our physical ones. So now I'm going to revisit my story about me training for the Olympics. So this is where I actually got my beginning in cyberspace. So while I was at Disney Wild World of Sports in Orlando, Florida, training on a daily basis, getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, weights, middle of the day, some distance running, 4 in the afternoon, sprint practice. I was actually a sprint hurdler. And I did all of that, but at the same time, after practice every day, I would moonlight and I would work for subsidiaries of Disney and also some of the other gaming companies that were located in Orlando at the time. So this was back then when I only had a compact laptop, and I would do all of my work on that laptop. And I thought I was great at what I was doing. It gave me the ability to be a professional athlete, but stay true to my love until one night I finished up my work and I decided to walk over to Walmart because it was directly across the street from my apartment. And I got to a stopping point, started to render this animation that I put together, went over to Walmart, got a few groceries, and came back. And to my surprise, my laptop was on fire. That compact laptop didn't survive. But that actually started my journey on actually researching why that happened. Of course, it wasn't the strongest laptop in the world. It wasn't, spec'd out and everything. But at the same time, the real problem was I just didn't have enough computing power. Computing power is one of the reasons why it is definitely hard to expand, across multiple industries with the metaverse. So let's look at specifically artists. We're using artists to design for extended reality, using metaverse platforms for deeper expression and brand experiences. So what does that mean to us, actually? You know, a lot of times we throw out these terminologies and it's just a bunch of words. Um, but artists, they come in and they create. And artists on various levels, whether they're a music artist, whether they are painters, graphic designers, and so on. You know, there's aspects of these alternative verses that they can apply their skills, and then we as the audience can actually consume that. So, as we advance more and more throughout the metaverse, or cyberspace as I like to call it, one thing that I've noticed is architects, engineers, artists, creators, we are all actually using the same tools. So, now that I'm teaching multiple classes, even across, not only in the College of Fine Arts, they're also spread across the School of Communications, the College of Engineering. My students are coming from all over at Howard University, and they're coming from all over because the common denominator is the actual software that we use. So this is why I like to introduce this new terminology. It took a while for me to actually push this out because I never wanted to be offensive to anybody. But I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with the terminology of AEC, architects, engineers, and construction. So we know that the architecture space, the engineering space started with mechanical drafting tables, pencils, papers, protractors, projectors. How many of you still use those things today? Oh, we got. I see 3 hands, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, all right. So some of us still use that today. I use my iPad for almost everything. So, if it's not the Apple Pencil, then I'm probably not, writing with it. But so I look at that as the AEC 1.0. As AutoCAD and other softwares similar to AutoCAD came about, I like to call this AEC 2.0. It speeded up the production process. You could get out 30%, 60%, 90% drawings faster in the construction space. You were able to get more visuals to the manufacturing floor quicker using AutoCAD rather than actually drafting these things by hand. And there were better review processes along with it. Now, as Web3 has become more popular, 3D softwares have become more and more advanced. I think we're now in the age of AEC 3 or AEC 3.0, and just replacing that construction with architects, engineers, and creators. As I stated before, we are all using the same tools. So let's look at the design process and why creators, artists are now coming to the forefront of this design process. So I worked on a project for a few months, and it was just a design challenge, and we had to pick a subject matter. That subject matter could be a company, it could be a specific person, it could be a school. Whatever that subject matter was, you had to actually come up with a design theory for that subject matter and then come up with use cases for what you would want to design for them in a virtual space. So quite naturally, with my background, the person that I chose was Steven Spielberg. For various reasons. I love his movies. Many of us grew up on Steven Spielberg movies. But there was a particular thing that I also loved about his movies that, weren't just visual. The scores to his movies were amazing. As I sit down, sometimes I like to actually listen to just the scores from his movie as I work. So in this process, I started sketching and sketched and sketched and sketched and sketched. And I came up with many various floor models that I liked. However, I thought, hey, why don't I do some of the similar things that the industries are actually starting to shift to? We know that it's becoming more and more popular to have fluid and parametric and procedural design. These are actually leading architectural forms now in the virtual spaces as well as the actual real world. Um, some of that has actually been made more possible with AI. So in my ideation phase, I took some of the things that I was doing in sketching and I ran it through AIs, and you can see some of the different results here. I also took some of the places that I've worked, some of the music conservatories that I've worked with. As you can see closer to the bottom on the right-hand side, this is Mixon Hall from Cleveland Institute of Music, where I used to be the director of virtual programs and innovation. I also took some of the design concepts from the Sydney Opera House and started to fuse together these concepts in making a design that I felt could be uh, representative of a virtual space that Steven Spielberg could utilize. And also, I knew for years he had this big yacht, so I wanted to make a space that he could pull the yacht up under. So, um, yeah. So now AI, we have to factor into these virtual spaces that we're creating. AI is now jumping into the pipeline. So just 2 years ago, everything was all about, hey, can you do something in 3D? Can you create VR around it? Can you do AR and all that? Now, in the last 6 months, AI has actually accelerated this process. But there's one thing that many people across the industries didn't take into account and still are actually transitioning into having it in the forefront of their pipeline, and that's sound. How many of you have ever asked yourself this? What is a world without sound? Is it a world at all? So now in my client process and in my teaching process, this is something that I ask my students all the time. We know that you're producing things that are visual and that people can partake in, but how does it sound? You know, what what will the leaves sound like? If you're making cars, what do the tires sound like on the terrain that the car is driving on? Um, if you have a space like these architectural buildings here that is created, what would the sound experience be like if you're playing music in one of the halls? If you're playing music in the dining room or the entertainment room, what would that sound be like? So now I'm going to walk you through an example here. An organization came to me and said, "Hey, Jacoby, um, we want to change the landscape of how women are viewed across sports, starting with tennis." And I was like, "Okay, um, that's a big challenge, but why?" And their story was very, very compelling. They said, "Look at women's tennis. Women's tennis is very vanilla, and everybody has to have a country club look." And I was like, "Okay, I actually never actually thought about that, but I see where you're going." Um, and so then they started telling me more about the design problems that's exist throughout women's tennis. Now, their end result was they wanted to be able to utilize hardware that can track the movement of women tennis players, and specifically women of color, because this organization was founded by two black women, and they wanted to then be able to use AI to then tell back to those women athletes what they were doing wrong, how good they were, just give them live data uh, as they actually practice or competed. So that was the end result. But between that beginning conversation and the end result, there were many design challenges there. So some of it started with fashion, and lots of the other results came down to actual data that you could give a person in real time. So, I started with a happy medium. Like, all right, let's create a virtual world first for us to simulate what it is that you want what you want women of color and others to actually see as it relates to tennis. So those of you that have worked in the gaming space or done any virtual productions, what we did here is just block out some of the ideas that we had initially. So one of the things that I thought about it from the beginning is, all right, there's various types of tennis courts. Um, we need to have both indoor and outdoor. But in that space, we want to have places for live playback. So, the long rectangle across the bottom with the abnormally looking guys, you can see there's squares on the wall or rectangles on the wall, and those would represent the spaces where people would actually go and learn. Um, this is a render of the actual stadium. It's a two-part stadium that has indoor and outdoor tennis court. Um, I also took into account there could be various environments because people play on clay courts, people play on grass courts, artificial turf, and so on. I wanted to give them that experience across the board. Um, Now, one of the things that we had was an API that we used for tracking the movement of the tennis players, and this derived from surfing. So there was a surfing project done, and people wanted to track the movement of surfers throughout water. So if this camera could actually track the movement and see surfers through waves, certainly it could track the movement of tennis players on the court. But there was one problem that we had. Whether you're in a virtual space or in the real world, it's all physics. How many of you have been at a baseball game? I'm pretty sure you all have been to Giants games here, and someone hits a home run. Do you hear it the same way a person does that's close to home plate if you're sitting in center field? So that was a problem that I had to look back on some of my experience from Cleveland Institute of Music. So I used to run this program called Global Audition Training. And with the Global Audition Training program, it was my job to connect all of these schools through bridges. We used a technology called Polycom. Um, and with Polycom, we were able to dial in bridges, see video, hear audio. But the whole objective was to, whether transatlantic or transpacific, be able to play together online. So this was with Cleveland Institute of Music, New World Symphony, Royal College of Music London, Royal Danish Academy, Shanghai Music Conservatory, and as you see, the distances are getting further and further and further. It's all physics. So when you think about that analogy or that metaphor of the baseball park, if I'm in a seat closer to home plate, when that ball is hit, I can almost hear it instantly. When I'm in center field or, the nosebleed seats, I can see it, but that sound is delayed because I'm further away from home plate. And with those musicians that were playing together around the world, some of the best musicians in the world playing together, no matter how good they were, no matter how great the timing was, everything was delayed because we're going across not only continents, but we're crossing oceans with these signals. So we had to think about how is sound going to be relayed in a virtual space the same way that it would be in the real world, because there is a part of how a tennis player moves that not only is triggered by the swing of a racket, their movement is also triggered by sound. These are just a few images of some of the other spaces that we, started to play around with, for simulation purposes, baseball stadium, and then also basketball. Here's some of the final renders for the play space, outdoor courts. We have the city behind that because we're building other experiences inside of this game. And I'll let you see what it looks like here. um, Programs that we use to accomplish this, starting the initial um, build out of the 3D models in Maya. We use ZBrush, um, Illustrator, Photoshop, and others for coloring and design. And then our end result, we brought all these assets into Unreal Engine to make a more of a gaming experience out of it. Um, One of the things that I want to talk about here is you all have worked on many movies, you've worked on music, and as we look deeper at our process and how we are trying to decentralize things more as it relates to creating alternate worlds, specifically the metaverse, the Web3 space. NFTs became really popular. Everybody wanted to trade an NFT at some point. Show of hands, how many of you own an NFT at this point? Not that many. That's surprising. No Bored Ape Yacht Club owners in here. So I just want to walk us really quickly before my last example. I want to walk us through just an example for us to think about. If you were on a movie here, and let's say you're a colorist, or you may have been a sound designer, or maybe you even wrote the score. As you saw in the previous example of the world that we created, there's many assets that go into even that. But what I'd like for the creative space, the engineers, the architects that are working across these projects to start to think about is what would it be like if we can have projects that were actually derivatives of the work that we've done. So let's say we had a movie. Let's just throw this out here, like Mission Impossible, and you were the colorist on Mission Impossible. Could you package that LUT, those LUTs that you use, or the LUTs that you create at the end? That movie is a success. That picture is a picture that people are going to recognize. So if I am a short film director, or I'm creating even social content, but I want it to look like that Mission Impossible film, could I then have a crypto wallet that then can purchase the ability to use that LUT? You see who I am, and you also know that asset is being utilized in my production pipeline. And then from that production pipeline, the money that is made on that piece of content then can pay you a royalty because you were the original creator of that LUT. Same thing with sound design. If I'm creating these Hans Zimmer-like sounds, I'm pretty sure all of you have watched Dune, and many of us love the atmospheric sounds as well as the scores that a composer like Hans Zimmer creates, what if you can take that a little further? And then there's multiples of movies made from those assets. Um, that is a space that I feel like the metaverse should be converging to because it keeps us building worlds that are similar to others, but we're building something new every time based off of some of the creators that led the space. Now, to end my presentation, I actually had the opportunity to not only write some music. One of my favorite shows is Stranger Things. Do we have any Stranger Things fans? That show for me was so nostalgic. I remember the first time I watched, I felt like it was a scarier version of the Goonies. And, it really made me connect to that world. Um, so much like I'm talking about actually utilizing it in, assets in a more streamlined Web3 format so that you know who's created the assets from yours. Um, just from my inspiration and making sounds that are similar to the synths that you hear in the movie and having things inspired by that world, I was able to create a track called Strangest Things that's inspired by the show Stranger Things. And after that, I was actually able to then make an Atmos mix with it. So I worked in LA at a studio in LA on it, and then was able to come here. And earlier this week, I had the privilege of working with one of the engineers here at Dolby to finalize that Atmos mix. So we're going to play that mix now. Do we have it queued? Thank you. All right. So, in closing, in conclusion, well, that was my track. um, when I started Metatopia, I wrote a letter to some of the top tech firms in the world, and I wrote it because I was sitting down one day with my nephews, and we all wanted to play a game online. Um, I had an Xbox, one nephew had a PlayStation, the other had the game on mobile, but we couldn't play together. And it started me to think there, like, how often is this the case? And in that letter, my title for it was "Technology Segregation Ends Here," um, and I didn't want to only apply that to gaming. There were many uh, things that I actually looked at over the landscape of things in the technology space that I wanted to apply that to, from the lack of funding for women and minorities to the inequities of technology in underserved communities. So, I want to leave you with this notion that I say in many spaces that I'm in. Let's not wait for women and minorities to be perfect for us to support them, especially in the technology space, because they are creators too. And if we were perfect before we're supported, many of our ideas would be unfinished. Um, some of us wouldn't even have ideas that are realized at all. And that's what I want to leave you with today. Thank you all.
Thank you. Why don't you up for some Q&A?
Yes, definitely.
Excellent.
Definitely.
All right. So as usual, submit your questions online and we'll tee them up here. So you showed a lot of different content creation and 3D content creation and sound and other stuff. So what are some of the most popular, what are the tools you use most heavily, would you say, applications?
So, in my daily um, production, I utilize Logic Pro for instrumentation, virtual instruments, just creating music in general. Um, I'm not a one DAW guy, so certainly I'll do mixing and mastering with Pro Tools, but I actually enjoy doing sound design with Ableton. It was one of the first DAWs that I picked up, and the interface uh, is just cool when it comes down to sound design. I like Logic Pro, overall, and now that they have the iPad version, whether I'm on the plane, train, whatever, it gives me the ability to create at the point of inspiration, which is really important to me. On the design side, Maya is a tool that I'm using on a daily basis, coupled with Unreal Engine. Um, I don't dive into Photoshop and other Adobe assets as much as I'd like to, especially with the new tools that they have that are AI, centric. Something that I'm really trying to get more into on my daily production now, as it relates to creating marketing tools around the stuff that I create. Um, but overall, Maya, I'm using that on a daily basis. I teach automotive with that, automotive design, footwear design, virtual production, creation, design. I'm using Maya on a daily basis.
Okay. And when you say virtual production, can you describe what that means in this context?
So it's not like getting on Teams or Zoom or anything like that. So what I mean by virtual production is we're creating worlds, and those worlds are used in film. So much like when you watch a show like The Mandalorian, this is the way. Um,
This is the way.
and or one of the Marvel movies, a lot of those CGI related assets that could have been infused through green screen, and now with the evolution of using stagecraft and LED walls, we're creating those assets that allow you to create a movie like Avatar, The Way of the Water. Um, the students that I teach, or even just myself utilizing in my daily production, we're creating worlds. Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
or film.
Um, do you use any AI tools for your audio creation?
You know, I actually don't. And this was something I talked about actually just before I came in the theater. I haven't yet used it. However, over the next month, that will be infused into my production pipeline. I like using AI early on in the process, in the design process. So I will also, implement that into um, my process when it comes down to audio. So I'm a software engineer too.
Of
So
course.
some of this stuff I
Is there
actually
anything you don't do?
right. Um, and that's one thing I didn't explain during the talk. I actually years ago called myself or coined myself as the creative engineer because I have both the science, math, engineering side that I'm using on a daily basis, but I love the arts. I can't put it down. It's what I thrive on. So, people often refer to me now as the creative engineer.
Hmm.
And but yeah, back to the question, AI will definitely be used throughout my music process.
Okay. Apart from that, is there anything that you wish the tools that you use would do, could do that they don't? That friction in your creation workflow today.
Perfect question. So I didn't want to put y'all to sleep by explaining this, um, but this question is so timely. Um, when I talked about Michael Benedict, he actually, I think he's still currently a professor at University of Texas in Austin. Um, Architecturally trained, and he looked at the metaverse, or cyberspace as we call it,
Hmm.
as being more of a human interface, or interfacing with humans, and these worlds merging or converging. Um, as you read deeper into the cyberspace book, um, it talks about having collaborative engines. I'd like to see us have it where we can all work more in the same space, not just saving files to Dropbox and other virtual drives, um, or even just looking at something where someone's on Zoom or Teams and we can see into the room that you're in. Um, I'd like to see more softwares uh, be able to provide real-time collaborative work in the same project where it feels like you actually have multiple hands in the pot
Hmm.
creating at the same time.
Gotcha.
There has been some attempts, NVIDIA with Omniverse,
Yep.
um, and others have tried to do it. I'd like to see us get closer to that. I believe, especially on the music side, that it could be um, something that's really not only innovative but can drive things. Because when the pandemic first happened, I worked with about 40 to 50 different professional uh, producers and playback engineers. And we all didn't have anything to do at that time, so we would just get on Zoom and spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day just trying to get everybody prepared for when the world opens back up. This is what you should be using. And a lot of the times we ran into problems when we would all try to record music or work on the same tracks, or so being able to solve that problem where we can actually have real, not just real time, but actually real collaborative work in the same space.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Is that mix going up on streaming services? It slaps.
I actually released it already on streaming services. Now I have to figure out how to do the updated Dolby Atmos mix. And since March 15th, 2020 till now, I've written over 100 tracks. Um, so now that I've gotten this taste of actually having my first Atmos, mix, I'm like, I got to redo all of these. So yes, I will be putting, at least 5 to 10 tracks out, sometime over the next few months after I get them all, you know, in Dolby Atmos.
Awesome. So, what did you like and not like about your Atmos mixing experience? And you can be honest.
Woo. Um, you know what? What I the thing that I didn't like was actually not even a dislike at all. It was a problem that, so I'll explain this about myself. I'm the same way like all the time. So um, when we were in the studio in LA, we just ran into an issue that nobody could solve because the main engineer wasn't there. Um, and after about an hour, I could tell people were panicking, and I'm sitting in the corner. Everybody's looking at me like, why is he so calm? Um, so I left. I came back, and we still had the issue for another couple hours. We just couldn't get the Logic session prepared to actually do the Atmos mix. But in that time, even though that was an issue, I learned so much about the Dolby team and how brilliant you all are. I'm sitting back thinking like, how can I hire like they hire? Um, I don't even think she was paying me any attention. Um, but the young lady that was working with us at the time that the audio engineers were trying to figure out what was going on, she started doing some other work, and I admired the fact that she could sit down and she was doing an outline of a studio in AutoCAD. And she's like, "Why are you smiling?" And I'm like, "Look at what you're doing. Like, you have skills that are that can be transferred across all industries, and you're running a mix session here, and you're using AutoCAD at the same time." I was like, "Do you know that the stages that Rihanna was on for the Super Bowl were designed with AutoCAD? You know, you can do that too, because you have those skills." So that was so impressive. So what could have been a nightmarish moment actually turned into a great learning experience. So you could say dislike, but for me, it was an actual winner. The thing that I loved overall was, and I'm grateful for, is to be able to work with people that have such great experience. So to be able to come here to San Francisco and do my final mix with Jurgen, that was incredible. And I wish that other minorities like myself could have that experience as well, because I tell you, I left that room feeling like, oh man, I could go out here and win a Grammy now, because the mix sounds so good. So the experience was one that I really enjoyed, and I'm hoping that I can have more of.
Excellent. Kind of related to that last point you're making. So, what are some ways Dolby can be more visible at Howard and other HBCUs, and how can tech orgs like us more effectively recruit from more diverse communities?
So I give this example all the time. Like, when people come to me, they say like, how can we reach the African American community more? And I'm going to apply what I usually say to them to Dolby. Um, so generally, when I'm asked that question, I tell people that, you know, come to Howard, or come to a nonprofit, or come to an entity that's Black led with what you want to do, and allow them to go to the people, because it's so much easier for them to hear that voice and hear you through that voice. Well, with Dolby, you have such great tools that, let's be honest, if you're in film or music and you're not using Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, you're probably light years behind anyway. But in reverse, I think it should be the studios that are in the areas of the HBCUs that Dolby should be partnering with to actually work with the HBCUs, because it's a lot easier to hear the voice of the studio that's in your community, and it takes a lot of the pressure off of Dolby also. Because if there's an Atmos studio there, you don't have to have people coming to San Francisco or LA or this place or that place. You can actually work with a facility that's within range of the actual university.
All right, excellent. Do you have any concerns that AI will take over the creative expression and limit jobs for creatives and creators?
No. I think that if you're afraid of that, then you're just a dinosaur. And I don't mean being a dinosaur in a negative way, because certainly dinosaurs serve their purpose. Uh,
They're feeling climate change.
right. Um, we create the AI. AI is based off of you, all of us in this room. Really, like if the if AI that's affecting audio, video, and so on isn't based on the experts, then even the creation of it, is not good. That's something that we should be thinking about. How can these experts in the room have more say into what AIs are created, how the AIs are created, how can you pour more of you into it? But, in actuality, I don't think it's something that we should be afraid of. It's something that if we embrace it, you know, it's still here from years to come. So it's should be more about what we can use from our knowledge set and infuse into AI. That'll make it more usable for us across the board.
Okay. All right. Time for one last question. In your view, what are the most significant challenges to accelerating the popularization and adoption of new forms of media and entertainment? Or we can pick a different one.
No. I like this question. So here's the thing. I think we have to stop tying innovation and the adoption of innovation to a specific dollar amount. Yes, I do know in order for our corporations to keep the doors open and keep the lights on, you have to be able to make money. But it's always driven by when a new technology comes out. If you can't afford this, oh well. And then we have to, as the world, catch up. So I think there needs to be more target marketing, more testing. I'm looking at, we know a product right now. I don't even have to say the name. I could just say $3,500 and 2024, and you all know what I'm talking about. Everybody's anticipating that coming out, and some people are actually, now budgeting for just the release of a headset. But it actually still slows down adoption because who can really afford it? And if you want people, if you want the bright minds of tomorrow, they're not always sitting, in a home that's upper middle class and so on. They're not always in the 1%. Some of those bright minds are in places that they just can't afford it. So if we aren't attaching innovation and the adoption of innovation to a specific dollar amount all the time, I think we can grow more rapidly as people.
Great, excellent. So thank you very much.
Thank you.